Louis Joseph Chevrolet was born Christmas Day, December 25, 1878, in the Bernese-Jura region of La Chaux-de-Fonds, Switzerland. During his childhood he spends time in the villages of Bonnefil and Bornevaison, which were close to the French border. Around 1887, when Louis was around 9 years old, the Chevrolet family left Switzerland to live in Beaune in the Côte d'Or region of France. Gaston Chevrolet was born in Durant, France, October 26, 1892, followed by Arthur in 1896, born in Bonnefil. In Swiss fashion, Louis's father Joseph worked in the watch and clock trade while Louis learned to repair and later race bicycles. Louis had gained intense interest in the repair of bicycles while working at the Roblin mechanics shop, which fixed carriages and bicycles. There he learned the basics of gears and mechanicals. As a teenager, he was a guide for a local wine cellar. An early account said he was impatient with the slow decanting of wine from cask to cask, so he invented a wine barrel pump that speeded the process and was used extensively in the Burgundy region for decades. He would also build and sell his own bicycle called the Frontenac. This name would be later used for his race cars. There is an old Bonnefil story that is told about Louis meeting American millionaire and racer William K. Vanderbilt, Jr. While on vacation in Europe, Vanderbilt was looking for a mechanic to repair his cycle. The story suggests that while getting his cycle fixed at Roblin, Vanderbilt observes Louis's skill fixing his cycle and invites the young Chevrolet to come to America, suggesting that there was grand opportunity for someone with his abilities. Many young men of that era would compete in bicycle racing in the hills of Beaune. Louis not only competed, but he won numerous bicycle races. During his teens, although in great physical shape, Louis loses interest in the bicycle and becomes a well-groomed, 6-foot chauffeur, a job which required driving and mechanician skills. Before the turn of the century, while at a waterfront tavern in Montreal, Chevrolet meets Henri-Émile Bourassa and stays at the Bourassa home for a period of time, before leaving for New York. Bourassa, who was from a family of cabinet makers, turned to automobiles and made his first car in 1899. Chevrolet, who later wanted Émile to join him in Detroit, however remained in Montreal, his last car built in 1926 with a Rickenbacker chassis. Louis, known for racing the two-wheel Derrick manufactured bicycles, leaves Roblin and was given a job in the mechanical shops of Morse and Derrick Company. Derrick built the well-known Gladiator bicycles, however Louis was introduced to the Derrick internal combustion engine. This event would consume his interest and Louis began studying the four-cycle engine. Sometime later he worked for Hotchkiss and de Dion Boughton, which also opened operations on Church Lane and 37th Street in Brooklyn, New York. During the turn of the century he migrated to Montreal, Canada and was able to employ work as a chauffeur and then migrated to the headquarters of de Dion Boughton Motorette Company in Brooklyn. During 1902, de Dion Boughton Motorette Company closes and he loses his position and learns of his dad's passing and encourages his mother Angelina, and family to migrate to America. The family Chevrolet leaves Havre and arrives in Brooklyn, May 2, 1902 aboard the sailing ship SS La Savoie. Louis eventually worked for Fiat in Manhattan. During 1902, now known for having great mechanical skills, Louis moves his new career into automobile racing after observing big car racing at the first Vanderbilt Cup race on October 8, 1904. Two new 75 HP Fiats would race the Vanderbilt Cup with Paul Sartori driving the Vanderbilt racer and William Wallace driving the other. NYC Fiat distributor E. Rand Hollander assigned backup driver Louis to compete in his first race at the Hippodrome near Morris Park. In 1906 Louis Chevrolet started working on the design of a racing car. He got involved with Walter Christie designing a front-drive VB racing car. In 1910, William C. Durant commissioned Chevrolet to design a car, and a company was formed, the Chevrolet Motor Company. The two men had conflicting views because Chevrolet wanted to build luxury vehicles whereas Durant wished to compete with Henry Ford by making the cars accessible to everyone at a reasonable price. On March 5, 1909, Louis and his brother Arthur were hired by Buick to join the Buick race team. During the last 2 years of the Vanderbilt Cup race on Long Island, Louis drove his famous Buick Marquettes, clocking the fastest laps of the race and nearly won the 1910 race, only to give the lead away to Harry Grant due to front suspension failure. The Franco-Swiss driver managed to beat fate and suffered many injuries from the Vanderbilt crashes. Lewis went on to race and win the Harkness Gold Trophy in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn in 1917. Lewis averaged 110 miles per hour during the 100-mile race, which was absolutely flying in the early hand-built cars. In this race he had beaten some of the best drivers back in the day. Prior to this race, Lewis had prominent victories at Cincinnati and Chicago tracks. As lead driver for the Buick racing team, William C. Durant, who thought the Chevrolet name had a pleasant sound, pursued Lewis to join Durant's new company, General Motors, and designed a six-cylinder automobile with fresh style, power and luxury. Durant wisely capitalized on the designer's racing fame. Lewis's association with Durant, however, was loathing at best. When William Durant pressured Lewis to add a lower-priced automobile, Lewis confronted Durant not wanting his name associated with a lower-priced vehicle and parted from the company, selling his stock in GM, thus passing up an opportunity to become wealthy. Lewis returned to what he loved best, designing race cars, and in 1915 drove a newly engineered car called the Cornelian at the Indianapolis 500. Lewis, banned to use his own name on his cars, later returned to the name he previously used on his racing bicycles, the Frontenac. In 1916, Gaston Chevrolet became a partner with his brothers in the Frontenac Motor Corporation. Driving a Frontenac race car, he competed in the 1919 Indianapolis 500, finishing in 10th place while brother Lewis finished 7th. The following year, Gaston Chevrolet broke the European dominance at the Indianapolis Speedway, winning the race in a redesigned Monroe Frontenac. In the process, he became the first driver in the history of the 500-mile race to go the distance without making a tire change. Following his victory at Indianapolis, he competed in several more events, winning a 100-mile match race against Tommy Milton and Ralph Mulford. Gaston married Miss Marguerite Buron of Brooklyn on October 27, 1916. In 1920, the Chevrolet brothers, Gaston, Louis, and Arthur returned to Indianapolis with the newly designed overhead cam Frontenac and won back-to-back races in 1920 and 1921 with Gaston at the wheel in 1920. Single and dual overhead cam Fronti Fords appear using the Chevrolet-designed Frontenac heads. Gaston Chevrolet, now the 1920 points leader, traveled to the West Coast and entered the Beverly Hills Speedway board track in Los Angeles, California. However, during lap 146, Gaston was seriously injured and later died when Chevrolet's and Eddie O'Donnell's machines crashed together on the speedway at the east end of the Grand Stand near the close of the 250-mile race for the 1920 championship. The accident occurred while Chevrolet, O'Donnell and Joe Thomas were fighting to make up the half-dozen laps they were behind the leaders. Gaston was a mechanic for 2 years before he demonstrated at the 500-mile Memorial Day race at Cincinnati in 1917, where he finished third, that Gaston earns a Driver of Merit. Lewis, overcome with the loss of his brother, vows to never race again. Lewis and his remaining brothers concentrate on car building and re-engineering engines and chassis of the day. During the early and mid-1920s, as noted car builders and owners, the Chevrolet Brothers racing cars enter the Gold and Glory sweepstake races at the Indiana State Fairgrounds in Indianapolis, Indiana. Lewis, having appreciation and no discrimination for the black race car drivers of the day, prepares his Fronti Ford engines for the so-called Colored Speedway Association drivers. Gold and Glory drivers such as John Simmons, Ben Carter, Bill Bottoms, Wild Bill Jeffries, and Bob Wallace would gain fame driving the Lewis Chevrolet Fronti Ford and Frontenac cars. Wild Bill Jeffries would purchase a Frontenac race car from Lewis Chevrolet, a design he had used in the Indy 500 for $12,000 and compete in the inaugural Gold and Glory sweepstakes. Wild Bill would win the 1928 race in a Fronti Ford. In 1929, Lewis and Arthur Chevrolet would also form the Chevrolet Brothers Aircraft Company with a new engine of their design but lost the business to Glenn L. Martin. Lewis Chevrolet died on June 6, 1941, in Detroit due to a heart attack. He had been plagued with atherosclerosis which had previously led to a leg amputation. He is buried in the Holy Cross and St. Joseph Cemetery in Indianapolis, Indiana. We hope you have enjoyed reading Lewis Chevrolet Biography, and we hope it's inspired you to new discoveries. If you liked our video, please like and leave a comment. Also, please subscribe to our channel to always be the first to know about new videos.